I edit this? Everything. Uh, Khaleesi, can you get the links for the TikTok and the YouTube and put it out on the comments? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not on TikTok, Suleiman, but I can get the YouTube one.
Okay, where did I put the? Sorry, Scott. Just give me 2 seconds. We're ready, but I wasn't sure if you get. Here we go. Where's it? What did I put? Right. Okay, guys. Apologies for the kind of flop and getting that ready. Right, just want to welcome the one and only Scott Ritter. I'm just gonna start this. Oh, go on. Okay, brilliant. Okay. Hi, guys, on TikTok. Okay. Guys, appreciate you guys joining in. We have Scott Ritter, an expert in the house who has been covering the war with Iran. And many of the predictions he's made about the war with Iran have been accurate. We're live on TikTok, X, as well as YouTube. Scott Ritter, thank you so much for taking your time out to join us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, we've seen the war with Iran start, and it's something that, from your perspective, you weren't expecting it to happen. You said in our last interview, you believed that this was a chokehold that was occurring. What do you think happened that caused Donald Trump to go over the line, risk everything to go to war with Iran?
Well, according to Marco Rubio, it's the Israelis who were hell-bent on going to war with Iran, and the United States had no choice but to follow on. This is a straight-up lie, by the way. It appears that Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, when Benjamin Netanyahu came to the United States, that they had made the decision at that time to bomb, and that the whole diplomacy was just a subterfuge. That basically they had decided, they had picked a date, it was all agreed upon, and that's when Donald Trump engaged the diplomatic path. But it wasn't to find a solution; it was to buy time. It was to lull Iran into a false sense of complacency, et cetera, et cetera. And so, what this shows is a degree of recklessness that no rational person would conceive of taking place in the office of the presidency, because what Donald Trump did is get America involved in a war that we can't win and we're not going to win, and that was discernible from the start. And no analyst would say, yes, that's the rational course of action for the United States to take. But that is indeed what happened. He committed to a plan that was not sustainable, and he committed to that plan with Israel, regardless of the advice that he was receiving from his generals and others.
Now, we've had 3 days into the war. The very first thing that happened was that the Americans and the Israelis struck and hit the supreme leader of Iran. Apparently, the attack was planned later on in the day, but they brought it forward based on intelligence reporting. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know anything about the specific of the intelligence. I mean, I'm not disputing the chronology there. I'm just saying that I'm not familiar with the intelligence that they claim to use. There's some stories out there about Israel hacking into cameras and putting cameras and doing pattern of life. That there was somebody in the retinue that was giving away. What I do know is that Ali Khamenei was at home, and he was participating in a regular scheduled meeting with his 14-month-old granddaughter, and that she died along with him. I think we're back.
Yeah.
Killing Ali Khamenei apparently wasn't that difficult to do. He wasn't avoiding death. In fact, some would make the argument that he willingly put him in a position to be martyred up front, sacrificing himself because he knew that through his death, he would make Iranian victory inevitable. There were people who believed that the Iranian government could be overthrown by opposition forces inside Iran who would come to the streets and demand the collapse of the Islamic Republic. By allowing himself to be killed, he became a martyr. And what we see is, indeed, there are crowds of Iranians in the streets today, but they're not there to demand the overthrow of the government. They're there to mourn the martyr, Ali Khamenei, and they're there saying that they will fight and die for Iran, for the Islamic Republic, the exact opposite of what the Israelis and the Americans wanted. So even though, technically we decapitated the Iranian leadership, again, the concept of decapitation only works if you buy into the notion that Iran is a nation ruled by a theocratic dictator, that Ali Khamenei was, some sort of a singularity. He was a supreme leader, but the supreme leader isn't a person, it's a position. And constitutionally, supreme leaders can be replaced. And by killing Ali Khamenei, you didn't collapse the government, you just triggered the constitution. And we saw immediately the Iranians form the three-person special committee, the president, the head of the judiciary, and a senior theocrat appointed by the Assembly of Experts that stood in for the supreme leader in terms of functionality, until which time the Assembly of Experts, in accordance with the Constitution, picked a new supreme leader, which they're in the process of doing as we speak. So there was no decapitation. You can't decapitate a government that adheres to constitutional principles of succession and is supported by the people. And that's what happened in Iran. We don't respect the fact that Iran is a constitutional republic. In the West, we don't even acknowledge that Iran is a functioning democracy, let alone probably the most viable functioning democracy in the Middle East. And so we got it wrong from the start. And again, this is, in keeping with the reckless behavior of Donald Trump, because not only did he authorize a war that we can't win, he had, artificial benchmarks of success. So we're the ones who lull ourselves into a false sense of complacency, thinking that we won the war by killing Ali Khamenei, when in fact we lost the war by killing Ali Khamenei.
That's an excellent a point you made there. Now, in terms of the tactics of war, what we've seen is the US and Israel, and we'll talk about Iran's tactics after this, but we saw the US and Israel ferociously bombing. They attacked a number of civilian areas. A girls' school was hit. And we've seen a lot of bombardment today as well, in response to what happened yesterday. What's your thoughts on the tactics that have been deployed by the US and Israel from a military perspective and a tactical perspective?
Well, I mean, I think there's the question, the tactics are, basically, how aircraft will penetrate airspace and drop targets. I think what you're saying is, what about their approach to targeting?
Exactly.
about the things that they're blowing up.
Yeah.
They're blowing up empty buildings, except for schools that happen to be filled with schoolgirls. Early on, they struck a number of places where there were Iranians either sleeping or meeting, and they killed, I think they're talking about 46 senior members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Command. But since that point, they're blowing up known locations. So you're blowing up, for instance, Ali Khamenei's residence. You're blowing up the presidential palace. You're blowing up the police headquarters of Tehran. You're blowing up the Ministry of Defense. You're blowing up the IRGC headquarters. Known locations. Now, for a second, you believe that the Iranians will comply with your targeting goals and objectives by fully staffing these buildings so that when you blow up these buildings, you kill the people who normally would be in these buildings, then you're a fool. Because the Iranians have, of course, displaced the functions of these buildings to other locations dispersed. And all we're doing is destroying empty blocks of concrete. We're not having the effect of nullifying or suppressing the functionalities that were contained in those buildings. And now we're moving on to the next level. And again, ostensibly in targeting, what you would do, you would be striking buildings, and then you would be monitoring and looking for movement, and then you would be trying to hit them where they relocated. But if they've already relocated before you blew up the original targeting, what are we bombing now? We're going to be going down a target list of buildings that are believed to or suspected to be involved in these functions. Again, known buildings. Yes, I imagine that we have drone activity, satellite activity, and there's a bunch of intelligence analysts trying to find new targets. But the bottom line is the Iranians haven't been moving. They were already there. They're already where they are. And so we're just going to keep blowing up places that we assume the Iranians are at. And we made these assumptions before the war started. So we're dropping a lot of bombs on a lot of places, and we're getting magnificent videos of explosions. And we're accomplishing nothing. It reminds me of a conversation I had with a senior Iraqi official back in the aftermath of Desert Storm. He said, you Americans are very good at blowing up buildings. And he said, we're very good at pouring concrete. And he said, but the thing is, when you blow up your building, it's empty because we've evacuated it. And after we pour the concrete, we bring the things we evacuated back in, and we're back in business. The Iranians have evacuated pretty much anything of value from known targets. Since 2005, Iran has been preparing evacuation sites. If you remember the Firdo underground enrichment facility, that cavern wasn't prepared for the uranium enrichment facility. It existed and was converted by the Iranians into an enrichment facility. But that cavern had been prepared by the Revolutionary Guard Command for evacuation purposes. There are hundreds of evacuation sites like this throughout Iran. And Iran has evacuated, for instance, one of the goals of the United States is to destroy Iran's ballistic missile manufacturing capability. And we are blowing up locations that used to be involved in ballistic missile manufacturing. We're blowing up buildings. The equipment that was in those buildings has been evacuated. So at some point in time, when this conflict ends, Iran will simply build new buildings, new facilities, and bring the equipment. It's the equipment that's easy to build a facility. It's harder to acquire the equipment. And the equipment has been preserved by the Iranians to the largest extent possible. So this campaign is failing even as it begins. The Iranians are also, I believe, very good at using decoys, and they have a fundamental understanding of American and Israeli targeting practices because they've been studying Israel and the United States and the way they wage war for some time now. And so basically they're going to give the Americans every opportunity to do what the Americans are programmed to do, blow up known facilities, and then you'll distract them with decoys and with movements to lure them over here to drop bombs, because there's only a finite amount of resources the United States have. We don't have the ability to blanket all of Iran with aircraft at the same time. Our aircraft can only be in a certain place. And so Iran will be luring the aircraft over here and then launching missiles over here. And this is a success. We haven't been able to stop Iran's ballistic missile launches. Iran is continuing to launch on a near nonstop basis, inflicting heavy damage. So, our tactics, our strategy, our tactics, everything about this campaign lends itself to failure, because we're not succeeding in accomplishing that which we said we need to accomplish. And then the final part of it is, normally you can adjust. I mean, I'm a military guy. I was involved in Desert Storm. And when we started Desert Storm, we didn't succeed. The first night we were supposed to destroy Iraqi fixed arm launchers to prevent missile launches against Israel. And yet a day later, Iraq is launching missiles against Israel. And so we had to go back and start hunting these missiles down and move additional aircraft in that should be bombing other targets. It was very disruptive to our plan. But we had enough airplanes, and we had enough bombs, and we had enough time. So we were able to adjust. Here, we don't have enough airplanes. Iran is 4 times bigger than Iraq, and yet we're coming in with less than half of the aircraft that we used during Desert Storm. We also don't have enough precision-guided munitions. That is, I think, the killer in this entire plan, is the fact that we will run out of bombs before we run out of targets. And this has already been mentioned by many. It's not just the bombs that we drop, but a key aspect of this fight is the ability to defend ourselves from Iranian ballistic missiles while we seek to accomplish our objectives, through bombing. We can't defend ourselves. We can't defend Israel. We can't defend our own selves. We can't defend our Gulf Arab allies. Not only that, we're running out of missiles. So eventually we'll be completely defenseless. And that's when we lose the war. So all Iran has to do is wait this out, continue doing what they're doing. And militarily, we will lose the war. And then, the U.S. Fifth Fleet and Central Command have been bragging for some time now how the Strait of Hormuz will never be closed, that we will keep it open. We guarantee that we will keep it open. Well, it's closed as we speak, and we can't keep it open. I think England has seen the price of gas double, and it's going to get worse. Europe's economy already struggling because of the stupid decisions they've made regarding Russian oil energy. When you receive a lot of your gas from Qatar, and Qatar has stopped shipping gas because of the threat from Iran, you now have literally an energy crisis, and you're going to see the price of gas go through the roof, which means businesses that depend upon gas will have to shut down because they can't afford to stand. This will be a cascading effect. And what this will lead to is political pressure on the United States to end this conflict by European powers. Right now, European powers are lining up with the United States, claiming they want to get involved in this war. They don't want to get involved in this war. First of all, they have nothing to get involved with. I mean, what is the vaunted German Air Force now going to relocate to the Middle East and threaten Iran in a way that the United States Air Force and Israeli Air Force can't? France deploys its single aircraft carrier. It won't. It already tried to and had to withdraw because they realized, oops, Iran might sink it. And Iran would sink it. The British are going to be retreating from Cyprus, not reinforcing Cyprus. And so, Europe is posturing right now, but when the people wake up and they can't afford to live because of the energy crisis, the pressure will be on the European governments to tell the United States, you have to end this conflict. We can't have this conflict continue.
Well, I'm not sure if they've got the power to put that pressure on. But in terms of question, one of the other components is we've seen Iran, in my view, very skillfully attack a military bases in the GCC countries in the Middle East, whether it's Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, Doha, Jordan. Even there was one strike on Turkey. Anyone who's got a US military base and has helped support Israel and the United States of America have been targeted and hit. And the hits have been so continuous without much ability to repel that it's shown an extreme weakness in the support of America for those countries in terms of being able to defend them, and the priority the United States of America has placed on Israel over them. And so the question to you is, from a tactical perspective, how do the GCC countries, the rest of the countries in the Middle East, deal with the threat that they've got now, what's been caused by the alliance with the United States of America and Israel?
Well, first of all, again, we have to understand that this is an existential war of survival for Iran.
Yeah.
So there will be no compromise.
Yeah.
Iran has one choice: to win. And how do you define victory? You need to evict the United States from the region. Yeah. Basically, the United States must leave the Middle East. One of the ways you do that is to get the Gulf Arab states to agree that the United States must leave the Middle East, not because they agree with Iran, but because they understand that if the United States remains, they will be destroyed. And they are being destroyed. They have labored under this false sense of security for several decades now, that the United States provides this umbrella of protection, and that the United States guarantees their security, and that the strength of the United States will hold nations like Iran at bay, that Iran would never dare to attack them because they would bring about the wrath of America. But now we're in an existential war of survival, where America and Israel are doing everything they can within their conventional powers to blow Iran to hell. And the Iranians are just taking it and knocking the teeth out of the Gulf Arab states. First of all, the American military bases that are located in these various Middle Eastern nations are being destroyed, systemically destroyed. By the time this week is finished, probably see about $100 billion worth of damage done to these bases. These bases will cease to exist as functional outposts, meaning that for the United States to return, they'd have to rebuild these bases. You're not just simply going to come in and reoccupy them. These bases are going to be physically destroyed. So there will be nothing for the United States to return to unless they rebuild them. As you pointed out, though, why would a nation allow the United States to return if the United States can't protect it? And so I think what you're seeing is nations realizing the United States can't support them, and that the only option they have is to make peace with Iran on terms acceptable to Iran. The pretense of security is gone. Look at the expenses. United Arab Emirates spent $2 billion buying advanced American anti-missile defense systems, and they don't work, and they are out of missiles. And now they're saying we need new missiles. And the United States is saying no, because, as you said, the priority isn't the Gulf Arab states. The priority is Israel. Israel gets the priority of resupply. And that has to be a wake-up call for these nations as well. And for anybody who doubts whether or not there can actually be rapprochement between the Gulf Arab states and Iran, one only needs to look at the example of Saudi Arabia and Iran, who came together because of Chinese mediation. The role of Russia and China in a post-conflict resolution will be to do just that, to bring these nations together. You already see Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, talking about that this conflict will compel the United States to be confronted with the fact that its manner of behavior is incompatible with the rest of the world, and the United States will have to change its behavior and change its profile, change its posture, which alludes to the fact that the United States must leave the Middle East. And I think this is the conclusion. Unless the United States can turn this around and somehow pull victory out of a hat, we're going to lose this war. And the consequences of defeat are often uncomfortable. And the consequence of defeat here will be that we no longer can claim the role of the guarantor of security in the Middle East. We can no longer pretend that we get to control, a region that produces 22% of the world's energy. We're going to have to let the nations of the region determine, what their security posture will be amongst themselves, which means that a nation like Iran with 90 million people can't be ignored and pushed to the side, as has been the case since 1979.
Well, yeah, I mean, what's worse than not being able to protect those countries is the countries become a target for basically complicity with the United States of America. So it's even worse than just protection. Now, in terms of what we've seen over the last 3 days has been ferocious bombing on both sides. Obviously, Iran has been taken on almost like 10, 15 countries. And obviously, Israel and the United States of America have been bombing. We just saw now before we came on, they'd bombed the west of Tehran, they'd bombed Shiraz, I believe, and a couple of other places, and Isfahan as well. And so I guess my question to you is, what do you foresee happening from a tactical perspective from both sides in the next few days?
Well, continuation of the same.
Okay.
The United States and Israel continue to bomb empty buildings because that's what we're bombing, empty buildings. And Iran will continue to blow up, strategically important facilities, not just American military installations, completing the process of erasure, but they will continue to target strategically critical facilities in these Gulf Arab states. The Iranian government has said that they will start shutting down pipelines. So it's not just that you're shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. Several nations, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar have created safety valves through pipelines that allow gas and oil to be shipped outside of the Persian Gulf area and loaded on other ports. The Iranians have said they're taking down the pipelines, and so I expect to see the Iranians start striking these pipelines. The Iranians have initiated attacks against the energy production facilities. Iran understands energy production as well or better than anybody else. They know where the critical vulnerabilities are. They know where the one-of-a-kind pumping stations or processing facilities are. They know what equipment to strike that is very difficult to replace. And so I think you're going to be seeing a series of very precise strikes by the Iranians that dismantle Saudi Arabian oil production capabilities, that take down Qatari liquid natural gas production, take down the United Arab Emirates, and basically in a escalatory fashion, put these nations on notice that their economic future is at stake here, that if this conflict continues, when it ends, they will have no ability to earn income, none whatsoever, and it will take decades for them to replace it. And that's the end of these regimes. And I think Iran is encouraging the unrest in Bahrain.
Yeah.
Long been talked about, the Quds Force having connectivity with Bahraini Shias. And I believe that we're seeing this play today because Iran is sending a signal that there will be no regime change in Iran, but there could very well be regime change in the Gulf Arab states. And if you have a scene where Bahraini Shias are dragging the Khalifa family through the streets, similar to what happened to the Hashemites of Iraq, you now put everybody on notice that they're all vulnerable, from Saudi Arabia to the sheikdoms of the United Arab Emirates to, the leaders of Oman and Qatar, Kuwait. They're all vulnerable, and they could all very well see that their dynasties are finished because of an uprising of people who are just fed up with their corruption, with the lies, with the deceits, with the distortions. So regime change is a double-edged sword. The United States and Israel pulled it out, but, it also affects the United States. Donald Trump faces critical midterm elections. And this war, when he loses it, and he will lose it, will cost him those elections, which means, in effect, the end of Donald Trump's regime. He'll be spending the last 2 years of his presidency fighting impeachments and hoping he's not just impeached, because he will be impeached, but convicted, which could become a possibility if he suffers a big enough defeat in the polls in November. And by losing a war of choice with Iran, he may very well. And Benjamin Netanyahu, too. Remember, he is an embattled prime minister who his only way to stay in power is to continue to escalate conflict. Well, he's taken it to the ultimate escalation. There's no conflict above this one. This is the knockout blow against the theocracy of Iran. This is what Benjamin Netanyahu says has had to happen all along. And when he loses, and he will lose, the Israeli people will wake up to the fact that this man has misled them, lied to them, and got them involved in a existential war that they lost, that Israel is being destroyed. And that's the end of him politically. His legacy will be forever tarnished. He will probably be arrested and tried for corruption, because that's something these corruption charges hang over his head. Regime change. So we very well get a lot of regime change because of this conflict, but not in Iran, everywhere else.
Yeah. Now, one of the things you mentioned was, actually, you mentioned it, a number of the experts I've spoke to, all of whom I respect quite a lot, are saying the exact same thing. They're saying the United States of America is going to lose this war. If all of the experts that I speak to, who are very knowledgeable, such as yourself and the other experts I spoke to, are saying the exact same thing, what is going through the minds of basically the military, the advisors of President Trump, and various other people in terms of this war? Are they giving the same message, or is it more of this kind of like, hoorah, we're going to win type of mentality?
Well, in order to be able to discern that something's happening, you need to actually understand what's happening. In the United States, we can say with almost absolute certainty the people that surround President Trump know nothing about Iran. They know nothing about how Iran functions, etc. I mean, if you have Jared Kushner meeting with the Iranian diaspora in the United States to create a committee to advise on the next government of Iran, if you believe that there is the possibility of a functioning government of Iran being picked by the diaspora, including Reza Pahlavi and others, that means you know nothing about Iran. And this has been borne out. We thought by killing Ayatollah Khamenei, people would be in the streets of Iran shouting death to the theocrats, death to the Ayatollahs. The exact opposite has happened. People are mourning the loss of this most highly revered figure and rallying around the cause of the Islamic Republic. This means that we have no clue what we're doing because we don't understand Iran. So this means we will continue to deceive ourselves, to believe that if we only do this, we'll get an outcome. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So we're losing. We have people who don't quite yet understand that we're losing because of their ignorance. But we have other people, too, who do understand this. The military understands this. They didn't want to fight this war. They warned the president that we will run out of precision munitions, both in terms of offensive capability, but also defensive capability. And that has to be frustrating for them as well. And there are also people who may not be informed on the reality of Iran, but they are informed on the reality of domestic American politics. For instance, J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is looking at his political future being flushed down the toilet because of the stupidity of President Trump. J.D. Vance should have been the next president of the United States. I mean, the Democratic Party was disgraced. All MAGA had to deliver on its promises not to go to war. And J.D. Vance would be president. And yet what J.D. Vance is seeing is because Donald Trump has sold America out to Israel, literally sold America out to Israel, that he is being destroyed and his political future is being destroyed. And Marco Rubio needs to understand that his presidential aspirations are done because he's been exposed as nothing more than an Israeli first person. And this is the other thing that's happening here is Israel is suffering a devastating blow in terms of American support for Israel. Right now, 70%, more than 70% of Americans are against this war. Day 3, 70% against this war. That number will increase as the scope and scale of the American defeat is exposed. And then we have to ask ourselves, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And when the answer keeps coming back to Israel, this will be devastating in terms of the American people's willingness to continue to blindly support Israel. And so, day 3, the architects of this war may not have awoken to the reality of what's happening because they're deceiving themselves. Let's have this conversation in a week when it becomes very obvious that it's not going the way they want, that they are going to lose, and what the consequences of that defeat will be. You're going to see a fundamentally demoralized Donald Trump and his inner circle when they realize that everything they thought they were going to accomplish in this term will never be accomplished because they will lose the midterm elections, and then Washington, D.C. will be paralyzed by, factional fighting.
Yeah, completely agree. Now, just before we came on, around an hour before, I believe, we heard reports that Israel was now invading into Lebanon. The Lebanese army retreated. Israel invaded into the land, and they've actually started moving in towards Lebanon. So my question to you is, first of all, were you expecting this? And secondly, we know that the Israelis tried this in 2024 and failed miserably, got completely decimated, and they had to retreat embarrassingly. This time they're trying to invade while they've got a front with Iran, while there's these drones coming from Hezbollah. What are they thinking? What are they trying to do? Is this achievable?
Well, the question is, what is Hezbollah's capabilities?
Yeah.
And I believe that Hezbollah has suffered, blows to its strategic capacity. For instance, its ballistic missile capabilities, etc., have been eroded or degraded by Israeli action, etc. But the Hezbollah fighter on the ground has never been defeated by Israel, has never been defeated by Israel. And they won't be defeated by Israel. So Israel just walked into a Hezbollah trap. The 96th Brigade or 96th Division, whatever it is that's gone in, they're going to die in southern Lebanon. They will not win. They will be brought into the hills of southern Lebanon, and Hezbollah will come out from the tunnels, and they will slaughter the Israelis. The Israeli Air Force will be compelled to divert significant resources from the fight against Iran to try and resolve the situation there, and it will be a bloody quagmire. Israel will do what it always does, then take their frustration out on the people of Lebanon, and they'll start striking, as they already have, innocent civilians. And this could lead to the collapse of the Lebanese government, because the current government has been a sellout to the Lebanese people. The current government has embraced a posture of submission to Israel. And now they will be exposed as nothing more than lackeys and stooges of Israel. This could lead to, the collapse of Lebanon as a viable nation state, whether or not Hezbollah is strong enough to fill that vacuum on its own or what. But, this doesn't bode well for Lebanon. Lebanon was already struggling to be a viable nation state. And I think right now the inequities of governance are coming home to roost. But Hezbollah is a viable political party and a viable resistance movement. And the resistance becomes more viable the more Israel occupies southern Lebanon. And so Israel has just done Hezbollah the biggest favor in the world by playing to Hezbollah's strength, by sending troops into the hills, the valleys, the villages that Hezbollah knows like the back of their hand. So I think Israel is going to suffer a huge defeat in the hills of southern Lebanon.
I vehemently agree with you, but also, what is Israel's reasoning for making this move, especially when they're in a battle with Iran right now. I know they maybe think that the United States of America is that, but I just can't see the logical basis, especially what happened after what happened in 2024.
Well, they're doing it because Hezbollah is launching rockets from southern Lebanon into Israel. Hezbollah attacked targets in Haifa, and what Israel's worried about is that that Hezbollah repeat the events of 2024 when they basically depopulated northern Israel, compelling the settlers there to leave. This had a devastating impact on the morale of the Israelis, on the Israeli economy, etc. And so what Israel's trying to do is prevent that from happening. In order to do that, you have to physically occupy the sites where Hezbollah is launching their rockets from. So Israel has no choice but to go into southern Lebanon.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, just one last question, because I don't want to keep you too long. I know you're extremely busy during this time, speaking about what you believe and, getting interviewed by a large number of people. But we do have a large number of listeners. We've got almost 8,000 people live. And one of the real questions they have is, how long will this last? When will this end?
Well, Donald Trump alluded to the fact that he's willing to tap into additional munitions storage capability. That means that we're basically going to steal from the Pacific Theater of Operations and take their ballistic missile defense capabilities and their precision strike munitions that have been, built up to support a potential conflict with China over Taiwan or the South China Seas. And if he does that, then the United States will have the ability to continue this conflict for, probably a month and a half. Iran is prepared for a conflict that can last many months. But now we're talking about bombs dropping. But there's the other factor, which is the economic factor. As I believe that if Iran follows through with its promise to shut down energy production in the Middle East, the global economy will be screaming. It'll be interesting to see about India because Prime Minister Modi, of course, traveled to Israel and fully aligned himself there, and now India's India's energy market is about to collapse because they are dependent upon Middle Eastern energy for a sufficient part of their consumption, and denied that there are no alternative markets readily available to them. But Europe will collapse as well. Japan, poor Japan, sitting out there in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, far away from the fighting, but encouraging the United States to bomb Iran. Japan will also suffer. South Korea will suffer. And as these economies collapse, and they will collapse, the political pressure will become unbearable for the United States. And I believe that the United States will have no choice but to recognize the inevitability of their defeat. So I don't think this conflict goes to the maximum length that can be done through bombs. You can bomb Iran into the Stone Age. They're not going to surrender. That's the reality. Iran has planned for this mission. They've broken their country into 12 autonomous military districts, each one of which is capable of surviving on its own and carrying out offensive military action. And Iran will keep launching missiles long after the United States runs out of bombs. So I think you're going to see the president come to grips in about a week and a half, 2 weeks' time with the inevitability of defeat. And he'll start making phone calls, trying to find a face-saving mechanism to bring this conflict to an end. And I believe that Iran is going to be saying no, 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 until finally the United States accepts that they're done in the Middle East and they have to withdraw from the Middle East. And then this war will end. So maybe in about a month and a half.
That makes a lot of sense. First of all, I really want to thank you for taking your time out during a very busy time, speaking to our audience who do appreciate. They were super excited when they heard that you were coming on the show. And where can people find you? I know your Twitter is @Ritter, I believe, so people can find you on that. And where else can people? Sorry,
the Twitter is @RealScottRitter.
Oh, @RealScott. Okay.
Yeah, I I stole Donald Trump's approach to naming.
You were
But
emulating.
you can go to scottritter.com.
Yeah.
It'll lead you to my Substack page, and you'll see it's been organized so that you can see all the different podcasts I do and places where I publish my writing. There's no paywall. And if you want to follow what I do, scottritter.com is the best place to go.
Well, everyone should definitely check out your site. And in addition to that, I think people should subscribe and support your work because you're doing really good work. You are pushing back against a lot of this propaganda and maybe letting Americans know that, and the world as well, the reality of what's going on, because sometimes they are manipulated. And you're quite right, 70% of them are against it, but we still have about 30% who are for it. And for you to educate them and make them aware about the situation is extremely important. So we really do appreciate you and appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you so much for taking your time out to speak to us.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That was Scott Ritter, who came on the show. Thank you for that, Scott. Appreciate it.
Okay. Have a good day.
You too. So that was Scott Ritter. Appreciate him coming on the show, giving us his knowledge and information. It was brilliant. I hope you enjoyed the interview. I think I'm just going to let the live just play out, and we'll probably end the live here. I'm talking about the YouTube live. We're live on TikTok as well. It said I'm doing some inauthentic thing. I didn't get it. I think it's because I put it towards the PC, so obviously that was a bit of an error. But in terms of the YouTube, we're going to be ending the YouTube stream. Your boy stayed up for this interview. You can see me how I'm looking right now. But appreciate you guys taking your time out. In the YouTube, we'll end it. The TikTok, we'll keep it on for a couple of more minutes and then we'll end that. And we'll be going back onto the space. I just wanted everyone in the different social medias to experience this interview with Scott Ritter. So you see what the view of an expert is in terms of this war with Iran. Hope you enjoy it and use it. Now, my username on X, for those who want to come back onto X, is Sheikh Suleiman, ShaykHSulaiman. And you can come across there because we are running 24/7 spaces there. I will put the live on the TikTok live on various times throughout the day. But we will be ending the TikTok. We will be ending the YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, appreciate you guys joining in. Appreciate you guys listening. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Do share the interview everywhere. Let everyone know about it. And we'll see you on the X Space.